Send it to me if you do. Alright guys, welcome to Encounter. Let's get started. We have some announcements to talk about before we get started with our worship and our lesson tonight. Some important announcements. First coming up, we have a 30 for 30, not this coming Sunday, thank you, but the next Sunday at the Hazes. Saw Colby slipping somewhere. We're at Colby's house. All right, we're going to have a Devo there. We're going to have a game there. We're going to have dinner there. We're going to have some worship there. A lot of good stuff. The details for that is you've arrived here at 5:15. We're back by 8:15. You don't need any money. You don't need anything. Most likely, since it's still cold out, we'll do an indoor game. We'll have some fun games for you planned out for that. So be there for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Invite your friends for that. 30 for 30, Sunday, March 8th. Okay, so that's a big deal. All right, Honduras Mission Trip meeting that same Sunday. That will be after class right here. All of you that are going on that trip, I need you at this meeting. We're in work groups, and so you guys, as soon as we get in there, we'll go over a few things, and you guys will split up and start working on your VBS groups and your work groups and planning out that trip. So we'll need you there if you're going to Honduras with us. So be at that meeting. That's Sunday, March 8th. All right. So that's two things on Sunday, March 8th. All right. Laser Quest is coming up in a few weeks, March 21st, Saturday. We're going to go play a few hours of Laser Quest. We'll have all the details of being closer to that. But be prepared for that. Mark out that night. It'll be roughly, let's just say 5 to 10 o'clock, somewhere around there. And we'll go play a few hours of that. We'll go out to eat dinner. It'll be roughly $20, $25 to participate with that. We'll have a lot of fun. So mark down your calendars. Prepare that. Go and tell your friends about that. We will have lots of fun at Laser Quest in Nashville together. Any questions on these events so far? I don't want to run through these without.
We won't be here.
You're going to be out of town the 21st?
Yeah.
Where y'all at?
We're going.
Oh, it's y'all spring break?
Why we all go?
Okay.
We all
That'll be most everyone's spring break. Okay. Maybe we'll move that up a week. So that would be the week from there. Would be the 14th. So we'll look at the 14th. If that's open, maybe we can try that. All right. We'll look at that. Y'all going the 14th too? Oh, for spring break? Alright, well we'll see. We'll see how many we have if we're going to do that or not. Alright, Sunday, March 22nd. I need to know if y'all are going to be in town for this, because I have Luke. You're not going to be in?
What time is it?
Luke, you're supposed to be speaking for me, bro.
What time is it? It's Sunday morning.
It's Sunday. Sunday after class.
Sunday morning.
That's the day y'all get back?
Wait, no, we're going back.
You are going to be back here?
Yes, I'm back here. Never mind.
You're not going to be back either?
I think we're going to be back on Saturday. I think that's when we're coming back.
Let me know, because most of y'all who I have listed to serve on this day, so I don't even know.
Don't take me off.
I'm not taking you off. Let me know, because that's going to be a big deal.
Because you're going to do, I'm going to do it.
Because as of right now, it's Luke and Carlos speaking, Grayson and Jackson leading the singing, and whoever else wants to participate with that. So let me know. All right. All right. Also, the big thing coming up is a spring retreat. Spring retreat is April 3rd through 5th. Exactly. We're excited. Hey, forms are in your small group rooms. Okay. So when you go to small group, leaders, those forms should be in there. Make sure to hand those out. Make sure to give those out. Encourage everyone to go to small group. Students, encourage your leaders to go to small group. Encourage your students and leaders to go to spring retreat. It's going to be lots of fun. It's at Fort Haven Christian Camp. Hey, and one thing I want to make clear, if money's an issue, we want you there at spring retreat. So we have scholarships available for you guys. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I want every one of you there, okay? Whether you consider yourself part of this youth group or not, I want you at spring retreat because it's going to be a blast. We're going to be talking a lot about community and the importance of community, especially church community, okay? So looking forward to that spring retreat. Any questions about spring retreat? April 3rd through 5th. I want you there. All right. So that's coming up, man. We're just a little over a month away from that. So some of you have already turned your forms in. I think the due date I have for forms is Sunday, March 15th. So that's just a few weeks to get those forms in. All right. Questions, comments? Concerns. Any concerns? Let's hope not. All right. Cool. Before we go into worship, we're going to say a prayer in a second. I'm going to ask everyone. We're going to go ahead and stand for a prayer, and we're going to pray ourselves into worship and a little different. And now listen to worship, and hopefully that'll save us from technological breaks as we've had after a video. So if you don't mind, go ahead and stand, and our worship is going to lead right into it after this prayer. But I just want to pray for you guys and go to our time of worship. For those of you that at Winterfest, we talked about a little bit about worship, and there was a lot of cool comments made on what worship really is and what worship looks like. And sometimes we define worship so much of what we're about to do, of just singing and praying and stuff like that. But there's so much more to worship, right? One of the definitions that was given at Winterfest of worship was this. I'm going to read this. We worship God every time we act differently because that's what God has done for us. Okay, let me read that one more time for this. We worship God every time we act differently because of what God has done for us. And to put that even simpler, when you choose God's will over your own, that in itself is a sense of worship. And sometimes we in this room, when it comes to worship, we have a tendency to let our minds wander to things of our own. We have a tendency to focus on things that are very selfish. And so I'm going to just ask you today, let's worship not in just the way we sing, but in the way we act. And choosing God's will over our own. Okay, does that make sense? And by doing that, not only are we singing and worship, we're worshiping God through choosing His will over ours. All right, let's pray together. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for our time together tonight. We thank you for Encounter and what it means to truly encounter you. And God, more than anything, that's what we're calling for tonight. We're calling for students to encounter you in a special way, that their hearts will forever be changed because of that. And because of that, a relationship will be started. They will seek you not just tonight, but the rest of their lives. And not that they'll be perfect, God, but they will always remember the time they have encountered you. God, we thank you so much for your Son who came and died for our sins and gave us the example that we have. And tonight, as we look at some tough topics, I pray for our discussion. I pray for our lesson. I pray for our small groups. And I pray for our leaders leading those small groups. And I pray that the wisdom we pour out through our leaders and that tonight, even though we're discussing something that's tough, that you'll be with us every step of the way. God, thank you so much for your wisdom and your guidance. It's your Son's name we pray. Amen.
I don't think you're supposed to sit down yet. Yes.
Come
All right, who in here is a Stranger Things fan? We got any Stranger Things fans? A few of you? Okay. All right, cool. I'll be honest, I've seen the first 2 seasons, but I haven't seen the third. And the reason is I really like season 1. I just sort of like season 2. It went a little sci-fi for me, and for me, that's not my thing. But I'm sure season 3 is great. I haven't seen it, but what I love about season 1 was, the nostalgia factor. I mean, it just seems like a, late 80s, early 90s kind of feel to it, and I can appreciate some of that stuff. But what I really loved is this idea they had of the Upside Down, and I'm not going to spoil the movie, but I do. If you haven't seen it, I'm going to tell you a little about the Upside Down. The Upside Down was this other dimension that they could go to in Stranger Things, and a lot of the characters went into the Upside Down, but it would be like the same world they lived in, like their school was still there, their homes were still there, everything was still there, except it was a lot scarier and a lot darker, right? And yeah, a lot of characters go in there. Most of them came back, except for Barb, right? And so, so poor Barb, she didn't make it. But crazy show, Upside Down, and this theme and this idea of Upside Down. The reason that's kind of stuck with me is because it reminds me of how real life can feel sometimes. Real life can feel where something changes in our lives, even though our routine may be the same, even though we're still going to school at the same place, even though we're at home, maybe something sometimes when something changes in our life, it can feel a lot like the upside down. It can feel like everything's the same except it's a lot scarier and a little darker, right? And maybe for you, it's someone moved. Like, if you ever had that where your best friend moves away and all of a sudden, like, your routine stays the same, but everything's just not as good as it once was, or you find this moment where your schedule gets changed at schools and everything just feels weird. You don't know the people in your classes like you once did, and it's just darker and scarier than it once was. And today, the topic we're going to talk about, some of you already see it on the screen, is this idea, this strange word we talk about, this word divorce, right? This divorce has so many similarities to the upside down. It can be something where maybe a lot of stuff may still feel the same, but it's a lot scarier, a lot darker. And now some of you, as soon as I say this word, you're like, man, this doesn't affect me. But statistically, almost half our families will experience this in one way or the other. And the truth is divorce has probably, at the very least, affected someone close to you, around you, right? All of us are going to know someone, or all of us have been affected by this in some way. And even if you haven't, tonight's lesson isn't just about divorce, but it's about dealing with brokenness, especially in a family setting. And all of us have families that have brokenness. And so all of us can relate to the topic that we're going to talk about tonight. But one of the things about the word divorce, or about brokenness in families, is it's gotten strange in our culture because it feels like it's gotten so common. And some of you, it's gotten so common, you hear about your friends' parents, you hear about all the times at school, that for some of you, we almost brush it off like it's no big deal. The divorce is something that just happened, it's so common, it's just one of those things. But even when most people act like divorce isn't a big deal, isn't there something in you that feels weird about it? When you agree, like there's something in us that feels weird about it. Maybe it just feels like something bad is, something is off, or maybe you do feel like it's a big deal, even if it's something that's happened years ago for your family or for your friend's family. Even if you've ever felt that, hey, this just isn't the way it's supposed to be type feeling, then you're right, okay? And we know, right, even through the Bible, one thing we know is divorce is not God's design for how marriage is supposed to work. It feels broken, and it doesn't feel quite right simply because it isn't. Now, no, don't misunderstand me tonight, because what I want you to say is it doesn't make your parents bad people if they went through divorce. It doesn't make your friends' parents bad people if they went through divorce. It doesn't make God love them any less. That doesn't change based on any of their actions or their actions in the past, right? This isn't, what we're saying, this lesson isn't about parents or your friend's parents. This lesson is about us. This lesson is about you as students. This talk is about you and the effect divorce or brokenness has around you and through you, right? It's about what to do when your family deals with brokenness in your family. And like I said earlier, every one of our families deals with brokenness. Every family experiences brokenness in some way, whether it's divorce or something else. And that can look like a lot of different things, but some of us understand what that feels like. And here's what happens. When divorce or brokenness happen in your family, or whenever there's big changes in your family, the relationships in your families change, right? Some of us experience that. There's relationships in our families that change, all right? And here's some of the examples of maybe what happened. Number one, maybe you see your parents as people for the first time. Maybe some of you have had that moment in your house where there's been argument or discussion. All of a sudden, you see your parents differently for the first time. And I can't remember the exact example for this, but I remember that stage of life when all of a sudden I realized my parents weren't perfect people. And it's crazy, right? It's that moment where your dad's not a superhero anymore. Your mom's not a superhero anymore. And you realize, hey, my mom is a human and my dad's a human, and they both have faults. My dad's not a perfect husband. My mom's not a perfect wife. My dad's not a perfect dad. My mom's not a perfect... Like, that's a crushing blow when you finally realize that as a teenager, or even as a kid sometimes. Like, that's tough to deal with. And like, I'm already had that fear now with little Corbin. There's going to be a moment where he realizes I'm not perfect. He like doesn't even like know Ann really hardly now. But like, there's going to be that thing one day, right? And it's going to be crushing to me when he sees, hey, Dad's not a superhero. So we're going to try to keep that as long as we can. But I mean, I remember that as a kid. I remember going through that like, dude, my dad's got flaws. My mom's got flaws. And that's tough to do, and that changes it. And what does it change? It changes your relationship with your parents, right? Your relationship with your parents just changed significantly. It's not like it was before. And sometimes it changes into like your parents at some age become a little bit more of a friend. And I'm kind of going through that now, and it's a cool stage. But sometimes it's like you rebel against them because they have flaws, and it changes that dynamic. And so we have to understand as students and as teenagers, you can understand like that's something we are going to have to deal with at some point. Is your relationship with your parents and those dynamics change? How do we deal with those? And here's the other side of this, like how do we deal with our parents if they have flaws, and how do we deal with it when we still maintain a relationship with God? Like, there's a lot of moving parts here, right? And so that's what I'm talking about. What is the question? What do you do? And the hard part about it as a teenager, especially if it's a divorce or broken family, there's a feeling as a teenager where there's not a lot you can even control, right? There's not even a lot you can really have a say in or do. And so the question really is, how do you deal with the reality that you can't control or can't escape? How do you deal with the reality you can't control or escape? And for some of you, it feels a lot like you're in upside down. You feel a lot like you're in the same world, but it's a lot darker and it's a lot scarier. And you're like, hey, how do I live in the upside down? How do I live in this world that I didn't put myself in? Like, it's not my fault that we're here as a family, but what do I do? And so that's what this talks about. How do we walk through this series of darkness, even if it's not our fault or even if we can't have any control over it? And to do that, we're going to go to the Old Testament. We're going to look at the book of Psalms, okay? This is a collection of songs, poems, and prayers. I love the book of Psalms. And we're going to be in Psalm chapter 46. And there's this psalm that I think can be so powerful for some of you tonight and really the rest of your life, so if you can kind of keep this with you. This is how it starts out, Psalm 46, verse 1. It says, God is our refuge and strength, and ever-present help in trouble. All right, let's stop right there. God is our refuge and strength. And check out this word. Ever-present help in trouble. All right, this word ever-present means, number one, He is always there. He never leaves. He is 100% all the time present for you. That is a huge promise, okay? That's a huge promise from God. He is ever-present, and He is our refuge and our strength. And check out this next word. The next word of this verse is this. Therefore. All right, so He's like, hey, here's one truth for you. I'm ever-present. I'm your refuge and strength. And based on this truth, this is what I want you to do. Based on what I just told you, this is what I want you to do. He says, therefore, and he goes on and says this. Therefore we will not fear. Though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging, we will not fear. Now these are some huge claims, all right? All right, let's go through, let's kind of go through some of these word pictures that the psalmist gives out. He says, the earth gives way. Maybe divorce or broken your family has made you feel like the ground is falling away underneath you and nothing is steady. Have you ever felt as a teenager that the earth beneath you is unsteady, metaphorically? Like we know what that feels like. Everything's changing. It's different. It's the upside down, right? And he says, hey, even if the earth underneath you is moving, you have something you can hold on to. Because God is your refuge and God is your strength, and He is always with you. The next part says, the mountains fall into the sea. Maybe nothing makes sense and everything feels solid and safe, and it doesn't anymore. And mountains fall into the sea. This is a huge move. It's a huge change. This is something that you can't predict. There's no way you can understand what's happening, what's coming next. And He says, hey, even in moments like this, you can trust me. Next part, the waters roar and foam. Maybe the chaos, noise, and the argument in your house has been as constant as the waves of the ocean. He says, even in that season, you can trust me. Even at the season, you can find peace in me. And what I think he's saying in all this, in the middle of all this that's going on, the psalm says 4 key words, we will not fear. Though the mountains fall into the sea, though the earth is moving beneath you, though the ocean is roaring and foaming, through the midst of all this chaos and the upside down, check this out, we will not fear. And that's a huge promise. That's a huge thing we can have. In other words, what he's saying is we will not let this outside situation affect our inside sense of peace, because our inside sense of peace has nothing to do with outside. It has to do with who is in the inside, right? It has to do with God. And I want to challenge you this week. If this is something that relates to you whatsoever, Psalm 46 verse 1, man, this is a verse, I don't have a lot of verses memorized, but this would be a good one to memorize. This would be a good one to put in the background of your phone. This would be a good one to write on your hand, put on your mirror. However you memorize stuff, like this would be a good one to do. Psalm 46:1. I talk a lot to you guys about how I anchor memories and anchor verses. Like this should be one for you guys. Because being a teenager is hard. Like I get that. It's difficult. It's probably more difficult than when I was a teenager. When I was a teenager, it was difficult then. But this is something you can hold on to. Psalm 46:1. It's something you can say, man, when things get rough, when things are hard, you say, hey, Psalm 46:1. God is ever present. No matter what's going on, no matter how unstable, no matter this feels like the upside down, He is always with me, and He's my refuge and my strength. And because of that, even though I can control this, I can control that. Does that make sense? And I pray that you'll hold on to that. So the other question that kind of goes with this is how do we act in the midst of this? Okay, if God's our strength, He's always with us. Okay, but what can I do? What do I do? I think Paul gives us some wisdom. He writes a letter to the church in Rome. And even though this is more to a church family, they had dysfunction. They had their own upside down going on in Rome. And he writes this in Romans 12, verse 17 and 18 to kind of help them out. And he says, do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful what to do. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. I think there's a lot of wisdom when your family's going through brokenness, when your family's going through tough times, to listen to these words, especially that middle phrase there. As far as it depends on you, live at peace. When it comes to what you can control, live at peace. In other words, you take responsibility for what we control, and that's on you. You can't control how your brother and sister act. You can't control how your mom and dad act sometimes. What you can control is your actions. You control how you react. And in the areas that you control, you can bring peace. Bring peace in the areas. You may not be able to create peace between your parents, but you can fight for peace between you and your dad by treating him well. You may not be able to change your mom's living circumstances, but you can create more peace in her life with the kind words you say to her. You may not be able to change how your brothers and sisters feel hurt by what's happening around them, but you can choose to be a safe, kind, and peaceful person for them. In fact, if your parents aren't going through divorce and you're just going through divorce, the same as you can always treat people well. As far as it depends on you, no matter what your family looks like, choose peace, kindness, love whenever you can. Think of it this way. Here's your bottom line. When it comes to your family, peace is always possible. We can always achieve peace in the areas we can control, right? The truth of the matter, all families are messy. All families have their mess. They have their issues. It may look different in our groups of families, right? But we all have our own mess. We all have our own brokenness that we're dealing with. But what can we do? You can still have peace in the middle of your messiness. And it all starts out with figuring out what is God's job and what's mine. Right? And I think there's a huge part of it because sometimes we get so frustrated by the things we can't control. But why? We can't control those things. Wow. God's job is this. Figure out what God's job and what's yours. God's job is comfort and guide. He is an ever-present God. There's our refuge and strength. That is His role. What's your role? Your job is to honor and forgive. And like we talked about last week, forgiveness isn't easy. Sometimes honoring people when they've upset us or they're the reason for some of this chaos, that's not always easy. But it's something you can control. Your parents are actual human beings. Some of you have come into line with that. Some of you have seen that firsthand, that they have flaws, right? You know what your job is? Offer your parents grace and forgiveness. And sometimes I know that's not easy to do. And sometimes maybe you feel like you're not even getting that in return. But that is what you can do. That is what you can control over. You have the decision to give them grace, give them forgiveness. It's worth it to fight for peace in your relationship with your parents. It's worth it to fight for peace in your relationship with your siblings. And it's worth it when it comes to God for God to show us how to fight for peace, because when it comes to your family, peace is always possible. I know this is one of those discussions that's hard to have. It's something that maybe we don't talk about enough at church, right? We don't talk about brokenness in our family. We don't talk about brokenness in this way. But as we just talked about, this is something that affects every one of us. So that's something that we wanted to address tonight. I hope in your small groups you can have an opportunity to speak out on this and hopefully get some wisdom from those guys. We're going to go ahead and pray over this and break you in to your small group some more discussion on this. Let's go to God in prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you so much just for being a God that works through our brokenness. You work through our mistakes. And God, we know that all our families have stuff. Like we all have stuff going on. You know what it is. But God, I just pray that in the midst of whatever season the students in here and their families are going through, that we can control what we control. And we focus on that. And we remember that you are a refuge and our strength. And in the midst of an upside-down world and upside-down situations that we find ourselves in, that you can be that light. You can be our strength. You can be what we hold on to. God, I pray that we do realize that and we can use that as something to kind of get us through these tough seasons that we may go through. God, help us to remember that to no matter how bad we may feel, that we can control how we treat others. We control relationship. We control forgiveness and peace. And Lord, let us to do that in a powerful way that we can bring on good change within our families because we were focused on you and focused on the right things. God, we love you so much. We thank you so much for all the blessings you give us. Most of all, we thank you for your Son who came and died for us and set the amazing example for us. And in His name we pray. Amen. All right.